Albert Breer joins us now. We really appreciate him calling in. Albert Breer, the senior writer for Sports Illustrated's MMQB. And Albert, I should ask you right off the bat, what would be your Olympic sport should you have one? What would be your choice?
I mean, I think, like, if I go back to, like, when I was a kid and, like, what I had the most, natural ability, I would say skiing and downhill skiing, because my mom's Austrian. I'm first generation, and so, like, I've always been able to sort of pick that up whenever I want to. Like, if I haven't done it for 4 or 5 years, it takes me, like, 2 runs, and I'm, like, right back to normal. So I know it probably doesn't fit with your theme here because you guys are talking Summer Olympics, but it'd probably be downhill skiing.
Oh, that's fine by me. That would be my choice 100%. Now, what would you never do in a million years?
Oh, decathlon maybe? That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. Right?
The worst.
Like I mean, like, if you're talking about, like, what I'd be least capable of or where I would embarrass myself the most, probably the decathlon, right? Like, I don't know, though, like, because swimming a mile sounds, like, pretty bad, too. Like, I would probably just quit in front of everybody halfway through, you know? So there are probably a few of them where I would make myself look pretty bad.
There are a lot of them out there that you're just thinking to yourself, how in God's name are you doing this? But that's why it's fun to watch it and not do it.
Absolutely. You know, and I mean, like, so many of them. Like, the pole vault's another one that just popped into my head, like, where it's like, it, like, sort of looks easy, and, like, when you're a kid, you watch it, and it's like, I could do that, and you don't realize just how hard that is.
Let's get to football, because I know nobody wants to hear me talk about pole vaulting, although now I'm totally captivated by the idea of it. Can you fill me in as to what's happening in Houston, please? I feel like we need an update with Deshaun Watson. What's going on?
Yeah, so, you know, I think the question was whether or not he was going to be put in the exempt list. And, you know, I just playing devil's advocate here. If you were Deshaun Watson's camp and you were trying to expedite a trade, you would try to make it as uncomfortable on the Texans as you possibly can. And so, you know, the commissioner has the power to put Deshaun on the exempt list. He has to meet conditions. And I know if a player's camp were to push hard against the idea that a guy goes on an exempt list, the league might back down. So, you know, my read here, I think Deshaun Watson and his camp are trying to expedite a trade out of Houston. And I think by showing up, he makes things uncomfortable on the Texans. By remaining off the exempt list, it makes things uncomfortable on the Texans. And, you know, I can tell you, Suzy, that it's a difficult one because if you're Nick Caserio, their first-year general manager, it's really, really hard to sell the idea of trading a 25-year-old franchise quarterback who's signed for the next 5 years for anything less than a historic return. And right now, because there are so many questions legally and with the league, I think he's going to have a hard time getting everything back that he wants. And so, you know, I think over the next few days, there's probably going to be some sort of effort to see what sort of return he can get. But I can tell you, like, Nick Caserio is pretty determined right now not to give Watson up at a discount.
And yet at the same time, Albert Breer, how do you try to work out a trade for a guy that you just don't know what's going to happen? You're putting a player out there that could be injured at any time if he actually does play, and if he's actually not bluffing or if they decide to put him back out there. But how do you even figure out the trade value when you have an open investigation? I mean, at some point, the commissioner could decide to put him on the list.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, it's like, and you don't know. I mean, I like, you know, legally going through this, and I'm not, I mean, this guy, like, before all of this was a guy who you'd say deserved the benefit of the doubt, so I definitely don't want to presume any sort of guilt here, and I don't want to, on the other side of it, like, completely dismiss I mean, it's just we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I can't have a take on what happened because I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly that part of it where, you know, you have the 22 lawsuits out there. You don't know what could happen if there's a settlement, like what the next step might be after that. And then, you know, you don't know what the league's going to do. So, you know, if you're another team, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, like, here's a generational quarterbacking talent, 25 years old, signed for the next 5 years, but there is that level of uncertainty. And so, you know, I think for each of the teams, there's that. And then on top of that, I mean, Suzy, this is one that, like, you got to get ownership sign-off on, too. Because I know there are certain teams where if there's an ongoing investigation like this happening, it's going to completely be a non-starter no matter how good the player is, you know? And so it's tricky for a number of different reasons for other teams that might be considering trading for him. And that's a huge part of why, Houston getting the sort of haul back for him that you would expect for a player like Deshaun Watson might be challenging.
You know, Albert, that's so interesting you said that, because I'm listening to all these people opine on radio and on television about where he's going to go and Tua, this and the other. But that's the issue, is that you now have a quarterback with a lot of money coming in who's only 25, but 22 allegations. It's not criminal. It is civil. Most civil does get settled, but it is a huge gamble right now, and in unprecedented water here, it looks like, or an unprecedented territory, because again, it's every way you look at it, it's a gamble.
Yeah, and it's and remember too, like the other part of it for an owner is this guy is, the minute he walks in the door, the face of your franchise, right? Bigger face than the coach, bigger face than the owner, the face of your franchise is Deshaun Watson, and you have to be comfortable riding through whatever's ahead with him, you know? And so that's a gigantic part of it, no question about it. And, you know, I think like I said, if he gets through this, you have a generational talent, 25 years old, the most important position in sports, and you have him under contract for an extended period of time, and if you get that position settled, that can mean job security for everybody in the building for a decade. So, you know, it's just, it's very, very complicated, and it's complicated for teams, you know, like the Eagles, like the Dolphins, like the Panthers, like the Broncos, that would absolutely be in line for a player like this at that position if it weren't for everything else that was happening.
Albert Breer joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. Suzy Shuster in for Rich Eisen. Let's move up to Green Bay, because I think that's another. Let's talk about it. It's only people are really concerned about that. Green Bay and Houston right now. What do you think is happening with Aaron Rodgers? Because he's a guy who's a strategist. He's quiet. He keeps all his cards close to the vest. What do you think is happening? Because should he not show up, he's bound to lose a lot of money. Obviously, Deshaun Watson had 10.54 million reasons to show up, but Aaron Rodgers he's holding his cards pretty tight.
He is. There's no question, and I think there's a lot of guessing going on. I don't know if they've gotten word in the last 24 hours or whatever, but I know that there are people in the Packers building that still didn't know whether or not he's going to show up, and the veterans are due to report tomorrow. And, I think you nailed it, Suzy, in saying that, everything here is strategic. And I think if we know Aaron Rodgers, we know these moves are calculated, and what he's doing and saying, none of it's by accident. And so I think you have to take what he says at face value and what he's doing at face value. Clearly there was a communication breakdown between he and the team over the Jordan Love pick. I think that sort of brought to light, I would say, a philosophical divide between player and team that's not unlike the divide between Brett Favre and the Packers 13, 14 years ago, which was a star player who wants to have a voice in the organization, and an organization that operates in a very old school way, where they've had great players there, but they're in a different category than management or coaches. And so, how do you solve that? I'm not sure. I think, that's one piece of it. And then the second piece of it is what we saw happen over the last year in Tampa. And I think this stoked some fires in Seattle as well, where, I think players are looking at what Tom Brady did and what Tom Brady was able to accomplish in Tampa, and how the Bucs built around Tom Brady in almost a LeBron-esque kind of way. And they say, A, that's what I'm up against, and B, I want to have a situation like that. And, it's not just that Brady got it that way, it's that it worked. So I think those two things are sort of at work here. Both, Aaron wanting to have an organization built around him on his timeline with urgency, which is sort of the Brady model now. And then number two, just the personality conflicts that I think exist, not between Aaron and the coaching staff, but Aaron in the front office.
No doubt. And I think you actually hit the nail on the head there, that obviously the Arians-Brady relationship and what happened in Tampa has changed things for everyone. And Aaron Rodgers has been around long enough to deserve the respect, and he probably sees what Brady did and said, well, I want that. So the question will be now, Obviously, will he play out the season in the hopes of getting that ability to go where he wants to go next year? If you had to make a guess, what would you say?
I would say that there's probably some sort of one-year Band-Aid put on it, which is, by the way, exactly what happened in Seattle. I think Russell Wilson came to the conclusion that the best place for him in 2021 was going to be in Seattle. I don't think anything settled long-term there, but at the very least, they were able to get Russell locked into playing this year for the Seahawks. And, I just think the Packers are so determined not to trade him. And, Suzy, as much as anything else, it's about the makeup of the team, right? And I guess let's just take the 4 quarterbacks that have sort of been out there as guys to be traded that are huge names that aren't reclamation projects. And those 4 are Rodgers, Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and Deshaun Watson. And I think the primary difference that a lot of people are missing here is the makeup of those teams. Detroit and Houston are rebuilding. And so for those teams, it's a little easier to wrap your head around the idea of moving a player like that. The Packers, the Seahawks were in the playoffs last year. They've got a ton of players in their prime. I mean, the right thing for those organizations is to hang on for as long as they can with the quarterbacks to give the other guys in the locker room and the coaches that are there the best chance to compete. So my guess would be there's some sort of one-year Band-Aid, whether it's in the form of a one-year raise, a new contract. This isn't about money, as we've established, but I'm sure money can be a part of the solution, even if it wasn't part of the problem. So I think there's some sort of monetary solution that leads to, maybe some sort of one-year fix where if things don't change between now and January or February, the Packers and Rodgers are right back where they started.
And, of course, Aaron Rodgers would be the first Packer to play 17 seasons. Bart Starr and Brett Favre had 16, and he's tied with that. The thing I want to point out, too, and I'm curious because you know him, he went through the Brett Favre scorn when the Packers brought him in, and Brett Favre wanted nothing to do with him. I think it's worth noting that he has taken Jordan Love under his wing, and that he has tutored him, and he has helped him along. He knows firsthand how it felt to be shunned by the guy that was threatened by him. I think it says a lot about Aaron Rodgers that he has been so open to bringing this kid along.
Yeah, I mean, I give him credit for that. The one thing about Brett Favre's approach, if you remember, it was sort of like he kind of detached himself from the organization. And in a way, Suzy, that almost made it cleaner for the Packers, he would go down to Mississippi and they could do their business and he'd do his business. And, maybe he was mad, but he was away from everybody else. Aaron, to his credit, hasn't, taken this out on his coaches who aren't really a part of the problem. He hasn't taken this out on his teammates. Now, that sounds great, but, it makes for some blurred lines there. And I think, you see what's happening with Devontae Adams now, and you see what's happening with Zadarius Smith. And I think even some of the coaches might have some divided loyalties when it comes to this, so you're right. I think that Aaron has done a good job of not taking this out on Jordan Love or other people that aren't a part of the problem that he has with the organization. But in a funny way, I think that's almost made things a little bit messier for the Packers themselves.
And, it's a part of the transition. We saw it with Brady, with Garoppolo. He didn't want a younger guy around either. He wanted him out of there. But what's a team supposed to do, Albert? At some point, you have to have a plan. You can't just go, it's not a bunch of friends. It's an organization to make money and to win. It's a hard one. I'm not sure where I would be if I were a GM. I mean, if you have a talent like Aaron Rodgers, who's a once-in-a-lifetime talent, you do have to have a plan, though.
I agree with that, but I also think, in this day and age, I just think, even if the players aren't partners with the team, they really, they aren't, you know what I mean? But you want to make them feel like they're partners, right? And especially quarterbacks who are treated in so many different ways, like quasi-management. So, I think in both the situations with Brady and with Rodgers, if their teams had given them a heads up, right, whether it was a week ahead of time, whatever, I think that would have gone a long way. And I can still remember with Brady and Garoppolo, they take Garoppolo. I think Brady was kind of blindsided by it. And then Belichick got up at his press conference and said, well, we all know Tom's contract situation and age. And, I mean, Tom was getting older but still planning to play for a long time. And, like, he had consistently taken less to stay with the team. So he was miffed by that, you know? On top of not getting a heads up, then it was like you trampled over him on the way to going and drafting Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that lingered, you know? And I think in a similar way here, if the Packers had called Aaron Rodgers a week and a half before the draft and just said, hey, we really like the Utah State quarterback. I don't know if he's going to be there. But if he is there, we might get aggressive and go and get him. We want to make sure you knew. Maybe he's mad in the moment. But, Suzy, if it's you, like, you probably get over that quicker, right, than not having heard, than having to learn while they were on the clock that they were taking the quarterback. Like, I just think there's like a human element to this, that in this day and age, you want to make those players feel like they're almost partners in the organization. And, you know, you're certainly not doing that by keeping them in the dark in decisions like this.
No, and the Bucs have shown exactly how to do it. I mean, Tom Brady has put out, Benjamin Button has really put out a total manual on how you can run a team and be an effective part of it. By the way, Albert, were you at all fooled by that Brady video that came out? I mean, can you really throw a ball into a ball machine like that?
That, like, whoever that editor is, the video editor is there, Suzy, sign him up. Because, I mean, I was looking for little, and you and I, like, we know what to look for in those videos, right? Like, I was, like, looking for little breaks or little pauses, or I couldn't find anything. So, I mean, if Brady did that, that's borderline impossible. But, man, like, and I was actually told in the aftermath, like, it wasn't real. But, I mean, the editor did a good enough job of, like, covering any sort of holes in that video. Did you see anything? I couldn't see a break. I couldn't see anything in that video that led me to believe that it was doctored. So,
Albert,
I
texted Chris Brockman. I'm like, oh my God, he's amazing. Tommy really did it.
Yeah, Suzy was
and he's like, Suzy, you're so lame.
I was like, come on.
It's edited. I'm like, no, it's not. I think I was too dazzled by the white teeth as he walked off.
Well,
I don't know.
Tom's got a better tan than Albert in the summertime.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on.
I mean, I got to tell you.
I don't know about that. Like, you know, those are fighting words, Chris.
Are you on Nantucket? Where are you right now?
I'm not. I was there for 3 weeks. We got back a couple weeks ago. My tan's still doing good, though. I've always told Rich that's my greatest skill is my ability to tan.
I thought you were going to say your tan was your best Olympic sport.
By the way, you do have a nice tan.
I'd be a gold medalist, no question.
Well, the Austrian ski team, by the way, that's I think that there's a future for you, Albert Breer. In case MMQB doesn't work out, I think maybe a little Austrian skiing, you get a really nice tan, the reflection from the snow. Just saying.
If they want to send me out to the Alps to do a month or two of training to see how it goes, like, I'm totally willing to go.
Oh, I want to do a Winter Olympics so badly. I just want to drink hot chocolate. I want to have the cowbell going in the background, and I want to be somewhere with a Stad in the background. I just want to be somewhere with snow that I can ski after I do 3 live shots. I think that's a perfect job.
No question.
Albert, thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling in.
You got it, Suzy.
That's Albert Breer from MMQB.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.